You consider yourself a good person. You don't steal. You don't murder. You might even go to church, give to charity, and try to be kind. You believe you're on the right path. But what if that feeling of being good enough is the most dangerous spiritual illusion of all? What if the very things you think are securing your place in heaven are actually paving a road to a place you never thought possible? A 20th century saint was given a terrifying vision by God himself. She saw the judgment of a soul that everyone, including the soul itself, considered holy. And what she witnessed should serve as a chilling wake-up call for every single one of us who has ever thought, "I'm a good person." The woman who received this vision was Sister Maria Faustina Kowalska, a simple, uneducated Polish nun who lived from 1905 to 1938. She wasn't a theologian or a scholar. She was a humble woman assigned to tasks like cooking and gardening in her convent. Yet, it was to this unassuming soul that Jesus chose to reveal one of the most profound messages for the modern world, the message of divine mercy. For years, Jesus appeared to her, instructing her to record their conversations in a diary. This diary, today known as Divine Mercy in My Soul, is a nearly 700-page testament to God's infinite love and mercy, but it also contains stark warnings about His justice. And it is within these pages that we find the harrowing account of the judgment of a soul that had done nothing terribly wrong. If you are comfortable in your faith, if you feel secure, I urge you to listen closely. This story might just change everything. And if you find this message important, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss future explorations into these critical spiritual truths. Saint Faustina writes that she was taken in spirit to the judgment seat of God. She saw a soul being judged. This wasn't the soul of a notorious sinner, a murderer, or a tyrant. It was the soul of a religious sister she had known, someone who had died recently. This was a consecrated soul, a person who had dedicated her entire life to God. By all external measures, she was holy. She had followed the rules of her order. She had prayed. She had worked. She was, in the eyes of the world, and likely in her own eyes, a guaranteed resident of heaven. Faustina watched as the soul stood before the divine majesty. God's presence was not a wrathful fire, but an all-penetrating light of truth. In this light, there are no masks, no excuses, no self-deception. Every motive, every thought, every secret corner of the heart is laid bare. The judgment began, but the accusations weren't what you'd expect. There was no mention of great, scandalous sins. Instead, the Lord began to recount the good things the soul failed times to do. He pointed out the countless graces He had given her, the countless opportunities for small acts of love and sacrifice that she had ignored. He showed her the moments where she could have offered a word of encouragement but remained silent. The times she could have performed a small act of service but chose her own comfort instead. The inspirations from the Holy Spirit to pray for a specific person that she brushed aside as a fleeting thought. These weren't crimes. They were voids. A life lived not in active malice, but in passive indifference. God had given her the tools to become a great saint, and she had used them merely to be acceptable. Then came the second, more damning charge. The soul was accused of being lukewarm. This is a term we hear, but do we truly understand its gravity? In the book of Revelation, Jesus says to the church in Laodicea, "I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. Would that you were either cold or hot. So, because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. This is some of the strongest language Jesus uses in the entire Bible. He prefers a cold, outright sinner to a lukewarm believer. Why? Because the cold sinner knows they are sick and in need of a doctor. The lukewarm soul believes they are healthy. They perform their religious duties, but their heart is not in it. Their prayer is a checklist, not a conversation. Their love for God is a polite acknowledgement, not a passionate, all-consuming fire. This soul had treated the King of the universe like a casual acquaintance, a distant landlord to whom she paid her dues. This vision shatters the most common and deadly misconception in modern spirituality, the idea of being good enough. We create a false scale in our minds. On one end are the terrible sinners, the murderers, the criminals. On the other end are the great saints. And most of us place ourselves comfortably in the middle, in the vast, safe territory of good people. We think that by avoiding big down, obvious sins, we've earned our keep. But this vision reveals there is no middle ground in the matters of the heart. There is only a heart that is on fire for God, and a heart that is not. The lukewarm soul's sin was not in what it did, but in what it failed to become. It settled for mediocrity when it was created for greatness. It chose comfort over conversion, complacency over charity. It was a life of spiritual coasting, and the terrifying truth is that coasting is always, eventually, downhill. St. Faustina noted the soul's defense. It tried to justify itself. In essence, its argument was, "But Lord, I followed all the rules. I didn't commit any mortal sins. I prayed the required prayers. I did my duties." And in the light of God's truth, this defense crumbled into dust. It was like an employee who shows up to work every day, never breaks any rules, but does the absolute bare minimum, shows no initiative, and has no passion for the company's mission. Would that employee be rewarded and promoted? Or would they be seen as a liability? This soul had treated its relationship with God as a job with a list of minimum requirements. It failed to understand that God does not want employees. He wants children. He does not want compliance. He wants love. A passionate, messy, all-in love that is willing to risk everything for him. The judgment was not a sentence barked by an angry judge. It was a simple, logical, and terrifying consequence. The soul had lived its life in a state of lukewarm self-sufficiency. It did not passionately desire God. So, in the end, God gave it what it had chosen, an existence without him. Faustina watched in horror as the soul was plunged into what she described as a terrible torment. The torment wasn't just punishment. It was the soul's own lukewarmness turned back on itself. It was the agony of realizing, too late, the immensity of the love it had taken for granted. It was the horror of understanding the divine beauty it had been too lazy to pursue. The vision ended, leaving Faustina trembling and praying fervently for souls who are in this state of spiritual peril. It's easy to hear this story and think of it as a quaint, mystical tale about a nun from a bygone era. But this vision is a mirror. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Is my prayer life a passionate conversation or a chore? Do I go to church to truly encounter Christ, or just to fulfill an obligation? When I have a choice between my own comfort and an act of charity, which do I choose more often? Do I get more excited about a new movie, a sports game, or a promotion at work than I do about the things of God? Am I actively trying to grow in holiness, to root out my faults, or am I just coasting, content that I'm not as bad as other people? These are the diagnostic questions for the soul, and we must answer them with brutal honesty. To understand why lukewarmness is so repulsive to God, we have to understand the nature of His love for us. His love is not lukewarm. It is not casual or indifferent. It is a raging, passionate, all-consuming fire. It's a love that left the glory of heaven, took on human flesh, suffered, and died a brutal death on a cross for our sake. The crucifixion is the ultimate statement of all in love. When we respond to that infinite, self-sacrificing love with a shrug, a yawn, and a half-hearted, "Thanks, I guess," it is the ultimate insult. It's a form of profound ingratitude. We are treating the pearl of great price like a common stone. We are telling the God who bled for us that He is not worth our time, our energy, or our passion. It's an insult, born not of hatred, but of a far more chilling emotion, indifference. This vision also exposes the danger of a purely rules-based approach to faith. Many of us are taught a checklist version of religion: don't do X, Y, and Z. Go to church on Sunday. Pray before meals. If you follow these rules, you're good. But this reduces our relationship with God to a legal contract rather than a love affair. The Pharisees in the Gospel were masters of the rules. They knew the law inside and out. Yet, Jesus condemned them more harshly than anyone else, calling them whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but full of death on the inside. Why? Because their hearts were far from God. They obeyed the letter of the law, but missed its entire spirit, which is love. The soul in Faustina's vision was a modern-day Pharisee. She did everything right but lacked the one thing necessary: a burning love for God and neighbor. So, what is the antidote? How do we escape this comfortable, deadly trap of lukewarmness? The vision itself provides the first step, a painful awareness. We must be willing to let the light of truth shine on our own souls and see the dust and the cobwebs we've been ignoring. We must pray for the grace to see ourselves as God sees us. This can be a frightening prayer. It's much more comfortable to live in the illusion of our own goodness. But true spiritual progress is impossible without it. We have to stop comparing ourselves to others and start comparing ourselves to the standard, which is Christ Himself. We have to look at His passionate love, His total self-gift, and then look at our own lives and honestly acknowledge the gap. This isn't meant to lead to despair, but to humility. And humility is the fertile ground in which the fire of divine love can be reignited. Love is not just a feeling. It is an act of the will. And like a muscle, it grows stronger with exercise. The way to combat a life of passive indifference is through a life of active, intentional love. This doesn't have to mean grand, heroic gestures. It begins with small things. It means choosing to pray for 5 minutes when you feel like scrolling on your phone. It means doing a chore for your spouse or family member without being asked and without seeking thanks. It means offering up a small annoyance or discomfort for the conversion of sinners instead of complaining. These are the little sparks that rekindle the fire. Mother Teresa said, "We can do no great things, only small things with great love." The lukewarm soul avoided even the small things. The soul, striving for holiness, seeks them out, infusing every mundane moment with the supernatural power of love. It might seem paradoxical, but the core message Faustina was given was not one of terror, but of mercy. The vision of the lukewarm soul is not the final word. It's a warning designed to drive us into the arms of God's mercy, not away from him in fear. Jesus told Saint Faustina, "The greater the sinner, the greater the right he has to my mercy." The lukewarm soul's tragedy was that it didn't think it needed mercy. It thought its own goodness was enough. The moment we recognize our own spiritual poverty, our own lukewarmness, and cry out to God for help, we open the floodgates of His grace. The sacrament of confession, prayer from the heart, and trusting in His forgiveness are the powerful tools He gives us to be cleansed and set on fire once more. This warning is not a locked door. It's a key, urging us to open the door to the furnace of His merciful heart. It is crucial to understand the purpose of this vision. It is not meant to create scrupulosity, a state of constant anxiety about sin. It is not meant to make us believe that God is a tyrannical scorekeeper waiting for us to make a mistake. The purpose is to awaken us from mediocrity. It is a call to leave the boring, grey lowlands of good enough and climb the vibrant, challenging, and beautiful mountain of sainthood. God created you for greatness. He created you to be a saint. Settling for anything less is the real tragedy. This is a call to a radical, joyful, and heroic love. It's a call to put God at the absolute center of your life, not as a weekend hobby or a cultural accessory, but as the very reason for your existence. It is a call to fall in love with the God who is madly in love with you. The testimony of Saint Faustina leaves us standing at a crossroads. We can continue on the wide, easy, comfortable path of being a good person, a path of lukewarmness that, as she witnessed, leads to a terrifying destination. Or we can choose the narrow path, the path of intentionality, of sacrifice, of passionate love, the path that demands everything from us, but leads to union with God Himself. The choice is not between being a good person and a bad person. The choice is between being a lukewarm soul and a soul on fire. One leads to the abyss of self-absorption, the other to the furnace of divine love. After hearing this, which will you choose? What is one small, concrete thing you can do today to turn up the heat in your own spiritual life? Share your thoughts and resolutions in the comments below. Let's encourage one another to answer this urgent call.